Howdy, y'all, and good now, whenever and wherever this finds you. Last night, Democracy 3.0 held its second Zoom meeting, and we had 8 in attendance. And I felt like I never really got in the flow of the meeting. And a lot of the things that I wanted to say, I was afraid to say them because I felt that I wanted to share my screen, and I felt technically challenged to do that. So I kind of just sat there. But today I got the video, and I found the parts where we were all talking about how we want a consensus and how we want to build a consensus and how to build a consensus. And then what I did was I added some video to explain where I'm coming from as far as the deliberative discussion. So rather than tell a bunch of stories about this, why don't I just get on with it?
So, we're setting out, we are building this organization that innovates democratic processes and integrates people together and brings people together around one shared consensus. And the goal of the organization is to grow big enough that eventually our shared consensus is, we're big enough as a block of voters that our shared consensus that we will be able to tell the government and the politicians, this is what we're doing. and if you don't go along with it, we're voting you out. And so the shared consensus part, I think that's a thorny problem. That's a major problem of our country right now, is this polarization, the idea of reality itself is starting to split apart, where people don't even agree on facts.
So our question is, can democratic deliberations solve our extreme partisan polarization? And we approach this through a method that I call deliberative polling, which is not the same as ordinary polling. It's sort of built on top of it. We begin with a survey of the public, but then we gather the sample together, either face-to-face or online, for in-depth deliberation in small group discussions, plenary sessions where the experts from competing points of view answer questions developed in the small groups, and the small groups and plenary sessions alternate. And the discussions are moderated in small groups and permit the participants to come to an informed judgment over a weekend of deliberation, and they register their final considered judgment in confidential questionnaires, so we don't get the pressures of consensus in a jury verdict. And we have large enough numbers that we can evaluate the representativeness and the opinion changes statistically. So in effect, we put America in one room, or whatever country we're talking about.
A larger amount of people to have consensus, and of course that's what I'm working on. But the idea is you bring opposite people together and have them talk in a facilitated, informed way, and they begin to actually feel good about each other instead of you're the enemy, you're no, we just have different points of view. We're really not different. We just think different ways of doing things.
You make me nervous. I'm afraid you're going to put me on the spot.
They're trying to invade our country.
I was a slave back in the day.
Water's going to go away. Food's going to go away.
La la la, the science isn't real. La la la.
The world is quite literally coming to an end.
This place didn't become this place overnight.
Too many Americans are prisoners to the government. Democracy is supposed to have some connection between the will of the people
and what's actually done. So democracy is fundamentally a very simple idea. But if you never get to form the will of the people, because everybody's misleading the public, manipulating them, spreading falsehoods so they don't know what to think, they will tune out. Public opinion never gets to form, really.
Man, I don't think people expect democracy anymore.
Candidates don't want to win the argument, they want to win the election.
I think people have sort of been worn down by the culture, and we've sort of given up on fighting.
So how can we organize a process where public opinion will actually serve democracy? So your voice matters. That's the theme of the weekend. America in One Room brings a scientific sample of the nation to a single place.
Over 500 registered voters to Dallas,
where they can talk to each other and wrestle with the country's big problems.
People were lynched here.
I could waste the rest of my life trying to convince somebody who's committed to misunderstanding me.
There's so many cases where negative attack ads focus the public on just one little thing. Maybe it's not even true, maybe it's made up, and it can turn the election.
I don't know if it's true, but I heard when Obama was president, he gave $300 million of our money away to Africa for abortions. That's what I heard.
So instead of manipulation, we want deliberation.
They receive a briefing booklet with different points of view on the issues.
So having balanced information with experts and using the collective intelligence of the people in the group.
People in my culture, some of them are white. But you look at my dark skin, and that's all you see is this.
She and I talked about it, and we explained our stances again, and I apologized.
And at the end of it, I have to say we hugged. So.
Kind of balanced and thoughtful discussion, I think, is the magic elixir that brings democracy to life.
Got like, say, 10 million people representative of America right now. Those 10 million people are probably like really polarized, and like 3 million of them, and the other 3 million, there's just a lot of tension, let's say, and it would probably be very hard to get anything done. So the other part of it is that we have to build a collaborative democratic process that works, like some process that allows people who may completely disagree about, lots of different ideas, and yet, be able to have everybody interact, like TC was talking about, like be able to sort of change how they feel and see each other. Like
when you take the triggers for partisan tribalism out of the conversation and just talk about the issues, it removes a lot of the poison.
We don't have to settle for the half-dead democracy that we have.
Does anybody in this room make $7.25 an hour? Okay, because I do.
They were wary when they came. Talking about politics?
We've brought them from all over the country.
Over 500 registered voters to Dallas.
You are surrendering 4 days of your life to what we think is going to be an extremely important exercise in American democracy.
What's missing in our public life is alternatives. Everything is yes, no. You're for me, you're against me. And life isn't like that.
America in One Room brings a scientific sample of the nation to a single place where they can talk to each other in a civil manner.
We've got enough people.
People were lynched here.
It's organized as what I call a deliberative poll. Some of my social science colleagues have wrongly concluded from ordinary polls that the public in aggregate is incompetent. But what we have found is that under conditions where people think their voice matters, the public is actually very smart.
I've changed my entire mind about millennials because I've got some in there that are just wonderful. They're smart, thoughtful, hardworking.
A couple of the people in the group went beyond where they thought they would ever go in sharing their experience and their lives.
It was really nice. It was a really nice judge-free weekend, and it felt really good, so thank you. Thank you so much.
This shouldn't be seen as jury duty. This shouldn't be seen as an obligation that Americans have. I think it should be cool and exciting and coveted to engage in a civic manner.
At least that, we can build this sort of inclusive space that you don't have to disagree with each other, but we're all still human beings. And we can all have a basic level of, I don't know what you need, whatever you need, so that you can actually sit and talk and actually find things that you just agree about, a consensus, instead of and not just have it devolve into
We're a nation of immigrants, and we have people from every nation, and we've always been a nation of immigrants, and I think that should continue. It makes for a strong, diverse nation. But at some point, we've got enough people. I kind of see all this influx of people out on our southern borders as an invasion. They're trying to invade our country.
I totally agree with that.
The preponderance of all economic evidence is that as a country, we have done better economically by having immigrants here over the long term.
My name is Kishana Lund.
My name is Lauren Aziz.
I'm Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I understand feeling like there's just no hope and feeling like the best that you can do is go to a place like America, which was such a beacon of hope. My mother was born in Cuba and fled Cuba when she was 4 in 1961, just as Castro was taking over Cuba.
I'm all about helping these people, but at the same time, I don't want these people to run away from their problems.
I guess I kind of resent the implication that her not going back to improve Cuba, there is no way to improve Cuba.
That's like saying there's no way to improve America.
There's some countries that are just not on our level.
People were lynched here. People were murdered here. People were raped here. I mean, this place didn't become this place overnight. And I know Cuba is bad, and there's so many other places in the world that's bad.
But
that's
within
what
my
I'm
mother's lifetime, we still might not ever be able to go back to Cuba. And it still may not be an improved place where if we did have that corrupt of a government in the United States, if we did
but we did. That's the point I'm trying to make.
We've never had a dictatorship. We have never had an authoritarian
It might have what
government.
has been a dictatorship. If I was born back then, I couldn't vote. I couldn't get an education if I was born back then. I wasn't even considered a human back in the day. I was a slave back in the day. So for you to come at me like I have no idea what you're talking about, and I apologize for raising my voice, and I feel just as passionately as you do. I know nothing about my culture. And to say that this country, this great country the way it is right now, which is far from perfect, hasn't gone through some shit. The thing that made me most frustrated is to be misunderstood.
I was a little triggered by the implication maybe that my family hasn't done enough to fix our home country.
And she was just like, well, it's America wasn't like a dictatorship. Yeah, if you look like me, it was. Absolutely.
She and I talked about it, and we explained our stances again, and I apologized, and she apologized, and we were able to hug it out.
And at the end of it, I have to say we hugged. So.
I was a victim of the misconception that most of the immigrants right now are creating more havoc in our country than apparently they are. If 500, 600 people can get together and get along with opposing viewpoints, opposing different cultures, races, ages, how come our government can't do that? They do put it as that the country's divided. And we're not. That's what I've found, is that we're not divided.
And to see how much we are so alike and how we are not divided at all is the best gift that I have ever received. By being called American. So, thank you.
Being able to create a space where people can come in and meet with their minds. So yes, preserve the semblance of self and meet in a space with their minds is a different thing, because in a virtual setting, people can join in from all over the world, from different backgrounds, to speak about one specific piece of existence. And, it's important to be able to, know what the uniqueness is of your situation, but be able to cultivate the commonalities between us. So I'm totally on board with that part and what you guys say.
I'm from Gregory, South Dakota. I grew up Democrat, and through college I was a Democrat, and then
the U.S. wants to be seen as the power of the world, then that comes with some responsibility that may not be equal to everyone else, but is maybe equitable.
Well, but I'm saying,
I get what you're saying.
If the environment doesn't get improved, water's going to go away, food's going to go away, we're not going to have an opportunity to feed everybody in the world. People are going to be worried about surviving.
but the models that they're basing all this on are wrong. Man doesn't have that much impact on the environment.
This is what I'm saying, that there's no more in the middle.
But if man doesn't have that much impact on the environment, and they're saying that this Green New Deal, which expands government control over so much of the country, so you're looking at all this very expensive program, and it's not going to make any difference anyway.
You can believe whatever you want, but I could waste the rest of my life trying to convince somebody who's committed to misunderstanding me, debating whether or not the science is even real, and it's just people who are just like, la, 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 the science isn't real, la, 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 and I'm still never going to be able to change their mind.
Oh, I was really nervous, and I thought, oh boy, everybody in this room seems to agree except me, but I think I need to speak up. I want to clarify that just because I don't think man has that huge of an impact on the climate doesn't mean I don't care about the environment, but when someone starts telling me that I can't eat beef, they've never been to South Dakota. We have miles and miles and miles of pasture land. Nobody wants to live there.
In 12 years, I'll be 42. And so if at 42, the world is quite literally coming to an end, or the climate is quite literally at its stopping point, I don't know what I'm supposed to do for the next 40 years.
We keep kicking the can down the road. And at some point in time, there's no more road left.
I don't know that human civilization has found where the end of the road is. Once the road ends, I don't know that we'll be here to see it. But when it ends, that'll be a conversation.
I think so much of it stems back to politics, because I think there's politicians on both sides that have, good compromises on these issues about how we could work together.
Then if it were not politics, we'd have a different outcome. We'd be working on this.
Yeah.
We're still all citizens, we're still all Americans, we're still all voters.
We all care about the environment. It was heard, and I just really appreciate that we are able to talk about our differences.
It was pretty amazing to sit with people that don't necessarily see things the way I do.
We're closer on a lot of things than you would at first think.
In regards to helping people have conversations without, focusing on what their point of view is. So, yeah, and I think that the platform itself can probably exist in many ways. But then also making it so that people would want to use it on a regular basis. So not necessarily addictive, but just wanting the participation aspect alone should have a pretty friendly user interface there, and something that could be measured over time. But yeah, I really love the idea, and I think that a lot of the pieces have already exist and have existed in small pockets for a long time. But we have the tools now and the ability to build these infrastructures that can provide for mass adoption of these new ways of doing things.
You notice in the discussions, there were almost no references to the political parties or the candidates. They were talking about the big challenges facing America.
Yeah, people are literally dying because they can't afford medication. That's not right. Healthcare is a human right.
We're like prisoners right now to these insurance companies. And I would argue that too many Americans are prisoners to the government when it comes to our healthcare system.
My understanding with Obamacare was it was supposed to capture people who are either self-employed or can't get health care through their employer. Why does it have to be so black and white? I think it should be repealed.
I think the Affordable Care Act should be reformed, not repealed, because it made people get insurance that didn't have it before. And if you run up a huge bill, that was the #1 cause of bankruptcy in this country.
Why is it so expensive? Because if it's supposed to be affordable,
Why can't it be a couple $100s? Why is it $400 and $500?
We don't have consumers in healthcare, and I would argue that's the problem.
People who are sick are patients. They're not consumers, and they're not shopping the way we shop for oranges or shoes or rice.
Healthcare is a different kind of commodity. If you need brain surgery, you won't put into a search engine, find me the cheapest brain surgeon in my area.
The large pharmaceutical companies and healthcare itself is so expensive that it's created this situation.
The pharmaceuticals, I mean, they're the multi-billion, trillion, gazillion-dollar business. Their goal is to put everybody on drugs for life. That's how they make their money.
The cost of insulin is ridiculous, and it's only because they can demand that amount of money for it, because you've got to have it to live.
Our price per unit of healthcare in the United States is greater than anywhere else on the planet.
I think the nation needs to determine whether everybody is entitled to health care or not. And I don't think we've come to that conclusion yet.
Yeah, this has all got to be, they got to get a grip on this.
Yeah.
Just right here, it says half of non-elderly Americans have a pre-existing condition. What, are they all going to be non-insurable? Who's to say what a pre-existing condition is? Things change all the time, and something that's not a pre-existing condition right now, 5 years from now, you might not be insurable because...
Well, it sounds like living is a pre-existing condition.
Yeah, it's okay. I think that everybody here has an interest in bridging that gap between the right, maybe in quote-unquote right and left.
We think that we are in America riven by these great divisions, but in fact, the public is much more open to discussion.
People want deliverance from the toxic polarization of our political system.
So that people can come together and actually get past their differences. You said, Eddie, if you put 10 million people together, 3 million would be, but they've done that. They found out that they can actually overcome their differences. So not 3 million, but they had 500.
Where the problem really exists is way down at the bottom at kindergarten, at first grade, at second grade.
I've seen kids where they pass them and they could barely read. If you can't get them from the foundation, they're gonna drop out. In New Orleans, Louisiana, I couldn't count past 100. And in New Orleans, it was about your zip code. I work for elementary school. The early childhood stages are essential. There's no reason why a second grader should not be able to count past 100 because of where they live.
Hi!
I'm here.
Hey, Jackie. How are you? Just trying to get the audio to kick in.
I gotta figure, I'm not very good with the computer.
So do I have any volunteers to read the proposal under the COVID document for us?
So the argument is schools should be strongly encouraged to hold classes in person.
Here in Houston, all the schools opened back up just this last Tuesday. There's already been a positive case of COVID at their school. Teachers are terrified to go back to school. Both of my kids stayed home. We opted out. In order to save money, my son's youngest school gave one teacher 6 classes. Our internet got shut off. My son couldn't do his homework that day. It's truly frustrating.
What works best for Jacqueline, where she can have her child at home, doesn't work for me. I have to go to work. I have to. I'm terrified of getting COVID, but I'm not gonna quit my job because those kids need me.
Not judging anybody who chose to send their kids back. Online learning is not perfect in any way, and if I were a kid in school, I'm sure I would be struggling too.
So a lot of parents count on the schools as a safe place for their children to be while they're at work earning their income.
And that's where I'm at too. It's just like, I have to go to work because otherwise I will be homeless. And I'll be completely honest with you, like I only have one child, and emotionally, my daughter was declining. Like she needed that social interaction, and I saw my child change just like that, and it was not for the better.
To human connection, and it becomes more precious with every year of our descent into the cold realities of cyberspace.
This whole program has changed my attitude. I'm a lot more open-minded than many of my friends today.
Yeah, I agree with you, Barry.
We all get together and talk, we do get along.
If people stuck to the issues, that we could get some stuff done in this country.
A lot harder to hate in person.
It's the 20th century now, And, we can meet and communicate much more easily than was possible before. And I think something is now possible that was not possible before, which is that, you can open source the democracy.
Hello, everyone. This is an opportunity for everyone to learn from each other, and I encourage everyone to speak openly and freely.
We think that we are in America riven by these great divisions, but in fact, the public is much more open to discussion.
As we became more educated on the topic, we became more moderate and less polarized.
The more educated we are, the more opportunity we have to sit down and recognize each other's commonalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Barry.
We all get together and talk. We do get along.
Political parties, that's a 20th century model. We can do better by crowdsourcing democracy and writing the legislation that we want on the president's desk ourselves.
This idea that, to me, the core of Brian's idea is, look, these politicians promise things and then we elect them and then they get into office and then they don't fulfill their promises. So that doesn't work. Why not just, write the legislation and then tell the politicians, this is what you pass, and, you do it or we vote you out.
Okay, hi everybody, my name's Louise and I've come from Dublin in Ireland to share my experience. So my experience is quite different than everybody on the panel. I was one of the randomly selected assembly members on the Irish Citizens Assembly that took part from 2016 to 2017. I answered a knock on my door one day and there was a guy there just with a clipboard and he was asking me questions and said, would you like to take part in this assembly? I really had no idea what he was talking about. I've no political background, no real engagement in anything political or social to much extent in my life. I should say that it was August and I had been at home for 2 full months with my 3 children, and this man was standing on my doorstep offering to bring me to a hotel once a month to talk to grown-ups about grown-up things. So I said, yes, okay, I don't care what it is, I'm going. That's the true story. So that's how I got involved, basically. There was no other way about it. That's how I got involved. And we started in October 2016 and we ended our deliberations on our first topic in May 2017. As a direct result of our recommendations, the government set up a parliamentary committee which basically went through a mini citizens' assembly. They had their own version of it, just an abridged version. And then the country went to a referendum and we saw basically within a percentage point that the country voted exactly as 100 citizens had voted to change the abortion laws in Ireland. A topic like abortion is obviously very polarising a topic, so we had in the media we had very much a strong yes and we had very much a strong no, and the sense was through the assembly process that really there was the black and the white, but the vast majority of people sat in this wide grey area in the middle. And what the Citizens' Assembly allowed to come about was for time and space to be given to that grey area, to allow people to discuss, to allow people to hear from experts, and to allow people to give some deep thought and deep, attention to a topic. And it's very important to get to the point where we have more day-to-day people involved in large decisions. The assumption is that my opinion doesn't really matter. What would I know about that? How would I be able to affect any change? But I believe if there is a mechanism there and there is a process available, that people will engage with it if they are asked. But you have to ask people to get involved. And I think as much as possible, the more that these types of initiatives can reach a variety of people from all walks of life, the more benefit for everybody, because everybody has something to offer. Everybody from the truck driver to the person who's a CEO of a very large firm. I've seen it in roundtable discussions in a hotel, week in, week out. Everybody had something to contribute, and that's what needs to be heard.
Petition foundation, and a method of deliberating as a group, and then say you have 100 people, then the groups are, what are they, like six people or something like that, and they deliberate, and then they each elect a representative for that meeting that goes up, and then there's a larger group, so you can scale the entire 100 people as a pyramid into groups of 7 deliberating, and so I think SAS is convinced that something like this can work, and I think something like this can work, and it can work in the digital space. I think we can do this. I think we can design some sort of process that in some sense can integrate these large numbers of people and their ideas and their desires, what they want and what they don't want. And as Thomas, as TC was talking about, we, a big part of, we need this because, otherwise, the way it's set up right now, you have, I guess the media or the establishment or whatever, dividing us, and you just have, 2 groups of people that are completely divided, and then, like a smaller group at the top who can sort of manipulate the system because the 2 large groups are always at their throats and at each other's throats. And so they lose their power because they cancel each other out. So yeah, I think that I think it's the ideas, and then but for our theory of change, for like how this is going to work, because you already have a system there, it's like you sort of have to build on top of it, but we can build independently this open source democracy, and then when it gets large enough, then you can just plug it into the old system, do all the deliberation and the consensus finding in your new democracy 3.0, and then just say, okay, we all agree on this, and so as a group, we're going to, tell the old system, this is what you do, and our votes, are the power that says you do need to do it or you're out.
We're excited you're thinking about joining our discussions. The deliberation platform is easy to use. Here's what to expect. When you log in, you'll be asked to introduce yourself briefly. The platform will guide you through the discussion topics. You'll get some briefing materials before the session starts, and some of that information is also available in the agenda. After all the topics are discussed, your group will develop and rank some questions to be presented and answered by plenary sessions with experts and policymakers. You'll join that plenary session with your group. Depending on the event schedule, you may join your small group again or complete a survey to finish. We hope you'll join us. See you soon.
Be great. Now, I think that in general, though, like the problem with our current structures are the people. Like our systems that we have, our human political structures represent the will of the American people that we are today. We're divided not because there's 2 parties, but because there's a giant rift in this nation from a society standpoint from day one, and it's never been resolved. And that's reflected in the Senate and the Electoral College and all the way up into the way people vote today. And so how do you change the hearts and minds of people is really the question that I think. Now, if you can remove people from the political apparatuses a bit by leveraging technology, that helps a bit if it's open sourced and done in a ethical way, of course. I think that's smart, but still, I like all of these conversations. We like to think a lot of times that if we just demonstrate a good policy to people, people will get on board, and it's just fucking not true. It's just not true. Technology rapidly getting us there, or we're stuck with waiting for people to have empathy towards one another, which I don't see happening soon, unfortunately.
Well, that's a good question. Are we being moved forward by technology, or are we waiting for humanity to get empathy for itself? I think both and. As you can see, the thing that's holding us all back, regardless of what we want to do, is the polarity of the people. And so getting the people to come together is important and is going to be part of this longer process. So I thank you all for letting me be part of this meeting and for letting me show you what I'm so excited about with the deliberative polling and America in one room.